morning, everyone. It's nice to be back with you again this week after reading about Saint Mother Theresa of Calcutta. What a beautiful witness of the faith, and what a great love and devotion to the Sacred and Immaculate Heart of Mary. This time, before I forget, we're going to start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Theresa of Calcutta,
pray for us.
Saint Pope John Paul the Great,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Father gave these videos this week was, I think, was good because it, as I was thinking about the journey we've been taking these 3 weeks, it's everything's starting to come together. And he said this is the chapter that people start to say, I get it, because he's been building, going back to St. Louis de Montfort, then Maximilian Kolbe, and now we see this consecration really in action in the life of Mother Theresa, and of course sharing this gift that she received with her congregation, and her testimonial letter to the congregation really helps us to see that. Because most of us know about Mother Theresa, or we maybe perhaps were alive when she was really touching the hearts of the world with her great compassion, the order of her sisters and things like that. Mother's life was quite fantastic. She started as a sister of Loretto as a teacher, and she had that experience in 1947, the mystical vision. And it tells us what we have to do when we consecrate ourselves, in a sense, that we have to be willing to take that step. The step to the great unknown is what Mother Theresa did. She had to leave everything behind her that she had before, all of her security, all of her sister friends, the children in school she was quite close to, and she had to let go. And Jesus says, I thirst, and she had to respond to that thirst. And I think through her consecration to our Blessed Mother that she came to understand this thirst of Jesus. And of course she had her own, I think, 25 years of the dark night of the soul, we call it. And I think as her life progressed, she understood that this was the thirst of Jesus for all those who don't believe. And perhaps to also share that emptiness, those who don't believe in God. Because all of us have been made for God, and that when we're not in a relationship with God, there's a deep emptiness within inside of us. And Saint Theresa of Calcutta felt that emptiness. Even though she knew that God was there, she never lost her love for our Lord. But she had to travel this dark night of the soul for many years. And as a testimony just to her sanctity, I think. There's a few things that struck me. We don't have any questions, but I think one of the questions the first week was, well, what about a relationship with Jesus? Does it take anything away? And I think the life of Saint Theresa of Calcutta shows us that no, it doesn't. It leads us into a deeper union with Christ through Mary, and that's the whole idea of the Marian consecration. This consecration, 33 days more and glory, is part one. The second part would be consecration of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, because they really go together, and often you see the two hearts together, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Her testimony was beautiful, the idea of a covenant. Now, many of you are married, and you understand what a covenant means, in the sense that you make mutual promises to each other. Spouses promise to give themselves totally to the other, receive the total gift of the other. In a sense, we're entering into a covenant relationship with Mary as well, and in a sense, we can use that spousal imagery in a real way, because we're saying to Mary, I give you my all. Totus tuus, John Paul will say, as we see next week. And then Mary will give us her all. And that's how Mother Theresa lived her life, in a sense, that she lived through the heart of Mary. And that's really a profound entering into this consecration of Mary. I'm not sure many of us will get to that level of Mother Theresa, if any of us, but the idea is to enter into the heart of Mary and let her do the rest. It doesn't mean that we stop acting, because we do, but we want to act through Mary, through her guidance and through her leading us to Christ. And we see through Mother Theresa also that's a journey that takes us to the cross. And Jesus never promised us riches. The only thing he promised us was the cross. For some people, this can become a stumbling block. But when we enter into the cross, it's the great mystery of Christ that leads us into the Paschal mystery of Christ. But also reminds us of just how vulnerable each one of us is, and how much we need God's grace in our lives. And when we do suffer, because no one can escape suffering. It's part of our human condition after the fall. But when we unite our suffering with Christ, it gives meaning to our suffering. So perhaps it's a sick member of my family that I can offer this suffering out for, or for the repose of the souls in purgatory. Perhaps someone in my family has just died, or I know of a tragedy, somebody died suddenly, and that person probably needs prayers. Suffering is never wasted when it's united with Christ, and it leads us to a holy way of life. In a sense, in a very real sense, we can be with Mary at the foot of the cross, and I think Father Gately talks about that, and certainly Mother Teresa did, was being there at the foot of the cross with Christ, and entering into that suffering with Christ. Besides her letter, which Father Gately talked about quite a bit, is the last day was be the one. I remember as a kid we used to get the same readings every year, back before they had their revision of liturgy, but there was a story of Abraham negotiating with God from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and 50 righteous people, he got it down to 10, and of course in the end God couldn't come up with 10. I'm thinking, geez, I'd always want to be the one of the 10. You know, it's just, that's what Mother Teresa is saying. Well, be the one that satisfies the thirst of Jesus. Be the one who enters into the heart of Mary. But we all have that free will to choose that, whether we want to choose that or not. But I think when we take that risk of faith, as Mother Teresa did, that we truly enter into a very deep and abiding relationship with Jesus through Mary. And through this relationship, the Lord can do great things through us. That's my kind of reflection on things. Jane, how about you?
I'm right there with you, Father.
Yeah.
Shared many of the same. A couple of things that stood out for me additionally, and I think for a lot of people too, was I know a lot of people kind of struggled with that espousal with the Holy Spirit. So I really enjoyed just a little bit further conversation about the Holy Spirit and about the heart, about what the heart was, not so much about being the muscle, the physical muscle, but the heart being the indwelling of the Holy Trinity, so that when we enter into the heart of Mary, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, we're entering into asking for the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in us and entering into that pure heart of Mary, that indwelling, that espousal of the Holy Spirit in her, so that when we connect with her heart, we're asking for that full outpouring of the Holy Spirit in our own lives as well. So that definition got a little bit further defined in this through Mother Teresa. The other thing I liked is obviously, you know, we didn't learn about the dark night of the soul till after she had passed away, but to hear more about that, and we've heard about it through other saints, St. John of the Cross, and you know, and the definition of that, and certainly we all have areas of that, and in this book it talked a little bit about that, you know, that areas of our life, you know, that hardness of heart, that coldness of heart where we may not feel close to God. And so kind of pondered in my own heart about, you know, that, you know, sometimes when we don't feel the closest of God, and how do we connect more closely in the way that Mother Teresa did to that, to what she asked us to in our prayer life, and what we're asked to, Mary's asking us to do, to be at the foot of the cross, to answer that I thirst question. And so I think for all of us on this retreat, kind of in a timely fashion, we should be kind of reflecting upon where we stand with the sacrament of reconciliation. You know, if we're feeling some dryness in our prayer life, or some, you know, have we been away from the sacrament? You know, if we haven't been in a while, maybe it's time to return so that we can kind of get the waters flowing again, so that we can be at the foot of the cross. The other thing I liked was when Father Gately read the letter and asked us to listen to it as if the Blessed Mother was, Mother Teresa, as the Blessed Mother was really speaking to us. And that was very powerful for me to hear that, and to picture myself kneeling at the foot of the cross, very much with Mary Magdalene and John, and kneeling there and embracing that cross, and fully understanding the suffering of Christ crucified, but also of those that loved him, and in the love that he poured out back for them, and really taking that into my own heart, and like Mother Teresa did, and asking myself, how do I answer that I thirst? You know, in what ways am I not allowing myself to be loved by Jesus, and in turn allowing myself to bring him to other people? And so those are things that we all carry in our hearts, that are sometimes those blocks that we read about in this chapter this week, things that block us from that love and from carrying that love. And so those are beautiful things. I also The other thing that's brought into this is the examine, which I use every night, which is really important to me, and that cheerfulness that Mother Teresa, one of the virtues that she brought to prayer, is that examine of really walking through each night and seeing the hand of God in our day, and also more clearly starting to really start our day with gratitude and blessing, and turning our hearts to I thirst, I love, and to be loved, and to be at the foot of the cross, and to always remember that in the suffering, as Father said, we all have it, to be able to offer it up, but also always know that there will be joy again, and that there is resurrection through every time we die to something. There is new life, as Christ has showed us. So, and to remain in hope. And I can't think of a better example this week than Mother Teresa, because to walk in that kind of darkness and yet do the work that she did and understand that darkness the way that she did and unite to it and still be the one and call to us to be the one was very powerful. It was a very powerful week, I felt.
Yeah, I think so. It really helped to bring things together, and I think probably with this following week, especially with St. Pope John Paul the Great, that this will really will bring everything together, and then we have the final 5 days where we prepare for the consecration itself. I think I was reflecting also on the timeliness of this consecration, where we talked about, we just had the Feast of Most Holy Trinity, we had Pentecost last week, all this talk on the Holy Spirit, and of course Jesus, God the Father, and things like that. It's really timely, and then we have this great Feast of the Immaculate Heart of Mary that we'll be consecrating those. So every time we celebrate this feast, we'll be remembering this Immaculate Heart of Mary, and through our heart, of course, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is usually celebrated the Friday after Feast of Corpus Christi. So this year they'll be right back to back, those two feast days. So it's really a wonderful time to do this. As Father Yaley says, persevere, hang in there. We have one more week of reading about the saints, and then as the program is, we have 5 days to prepare for that consecration. In many ways, it will be a review and a time for us to continue to reflect and to deepen our understanding of this consecration that we'll be making. So keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless you. And before we go, let's end with a prayer. Almost forgot. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Give us faith, glory be. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Immaculate Heart of Mary,
Pray for us.
Pope St. John Paul the Great,
Pray for us.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.